Hi, my name's Caitlin Kelly, and my person that I chose for having a liberal arts bachelor's degree is going to be Michael Eisner. So, who is Michael Eisner? Well, Michael Eisner is most famously known for being the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He was born on March 7th in 1942, which makes him about 81 years old today. He's a husband, he has a family and kids, but he is also one of the most pronounced businessmen in America. So, for his liberal arts degree, he graduated from Denison University in 1964, which is with a bachelor's degree of arts in English. So, his former job positions and accomplishments. Michael Eisner was his first main getaway job after he graduated college was being the vice president of programming for ABC television, and this is a really big job to start off with, so it just shows you how much of a hard worker he was. Now the next big job that he had was moving up to be the president of Paramount Pictures. Paramount Pictures is what we see on all of our favorite movies, when we see it in the movie theater, the Paramount Pictures logo that pops up, that's him. And then in 1984, he actually became the CEO of Walt Disney, and he was the CEO until about 2005. And some of his accomplishments that he's had is he was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 2012, and he is actually the author of 3 different books. The first book is called A Work in Progress. The second book is Working Together: Why Great Partnerships Succeed, and the last one is going to be Camps, which is actually his own autobiography. And one of his last accomplishments was that he formed the Tornante Company, and this was basically a company built to invest into media and entertainment enterprises. So not only was he well knowledgeable on how to run a business, but he was actually well knowledgeable on all the finances and investments and things like that. So, some of his attributes and his advice. I would say that in a lot of the interviews that he did, one thing that I noticed from all of them is that he's very grateful for having a liberal arts education and often talks about how important it is to have a general knowledge of everything before you go and solidify your whole life to one specific kind of job. And he always talks about in his interviews how his background in liberal arts gave him different job opportunities. As you can see, he had quite the extensive resume, and so for him, having a liberal arts degree meant that he had all this experience with different kinds of things and not just one thing like finance, or not just one thing like communications. He kind of got a little bit of everything with his liberal arts degree. And some of his advice, I would say that I actually think it's really good advice, especially for a young college student to be able to hear. So the next one is kind of a long quote, and he said it during an interview, and he said, "I would start with getting a good liberal arts education. I believe in the college environment. I believe in studying English, religion, language, philosophy, economics, and history. All of them are important. And before you decide on a specific field, it'd be good to have a general knowledge of different things." So after hearing this, it kind of is a bit of an affirmation about to have a liberal arts degree, because you hear a lot of negative things about liberal arts degree, and hearing such a successful person talk about how it's important to have a general understanding of a lot of different things before you go into one specific kind of study is very validating. And his next piece of advice is to do what you like to do. And in a lot of his interviews, he talks about how he gives an example of one of them asked him why he doesn't go on vacation that often, and he says that his whole life is a vacation. And he talks about how he loves what he does, and for him, when he has to go somewhere for work, that's also a vacation for him. So when he's traveling, he's working, and life is a vacation for him because he loves what he's doing. And his last piece of advice that he gives is kind of on leadership. And he has all of these different roles, like being president, vice president, CEO. And so he talks about how to be a leader, you have to be an example You have to be there, you have to be a nudge, and then you have to be very creative. And so I think these 4 things are really important. And like being an example, like you have to be what you want your teammates to be. You have to be there, like you have to show up on time, like ready to go. You have to be a nudge. So like when you're a leader, sometimes you have to like push people into the right direction. And then finally, he talks about being creative. And so he branches into how running, like being the CEO of Walt Disney. Walt Disney is like, when you think of it, you think of it as an already famous company, but you have to keep on reinventing things. And he branches into this and how it's hard to keep Walt Disney going, and it's not just easy just because it already started off as a good company. So some of his values from liberal arts that I can see working into his life would be courage, intellectual curiosity, and persuasion. Starting off with courage, I can see courage in his life and when he makes changes in his life and in his company. I already kind of talked about this earlier. So when he talks about how in order to be a leader, you have to have the courage to reinvent things. And so this isn't really an easy thing. Like you have to branch out of your comfort zone and be the one to want to create new things. And I think he shows courage when he showed that Disney became a powerhouse in film after it struggled for so long. This was kind of an interesting thing for me to learn because growing up, I've always thought that Disney movies were always super popular. But when he first became the CEO of Disney, the film era is where it actually really struggled in, and it wasn't until he hired someone that specialized in film that Disney kind of took off in their filmmaking. So this demonstrates a lot of courage because he saw where something was lacking and he took the courage, like it took courage out of him to want to like make it better. And next, for intellectual curiosity, this one's actually a quote from one of his interviews that I think perfectly explains intellectual curiosity. He says, "I'm really interested in creativity. It's the work I've been in all my life." So it shows that he's interested in entertainment, and so he's curious on like how to make it better, like what he can do to like, be better. And I feel like this is why he's so successful, because he's actually interested in what he wants to do. And the last value that I see working in his life is going to be persuasion. So as we've talked about, he was president, vice president, CEO. He kind of worked his way up the ladder in these big giant companies, and I think it took a lot of persuasion for him to get to where he was. So branching from him now into how I can use that into my life. So how can I use a liberal arts degree to my benefit? Long term, I want to be a nurse, so I can use the foundations like courage, empathy, and humility to get me to where I want to be. For courage, for nursing, I'm definitely going to have to step out of my comfort zone. One thing that I know that I'm not good at doing is when I'm put in a position at work to where somebody's not doing something right, instead of reprimanding them for not doing that right, I would rather just do everything on my own and be stressed out than have to make somebody else feel like they're not doing something right. So that's something that I'm going to have to step out of my comfort zone and have the courage to do, is going to be able to step up and speak up when I need to. For empathy, I think this one's really self-explanatory when it comes to nursing. Empathy is believing others when they're sharing and being vulnerable about their emotional situations. So there's going to be a lot of situations where somebody's being vulnerable and they're trying to share like how they're feeling emotionally, and I'm going to have to believe them and help them solve their problems. The last one is going to be humility, and I think this one is going to be really important for me, especially when I'm in nursing school and doing clinicals and things like that. So for humility, it's kind of just being okay with being wrong. There's going to be a lot of times in nursing school where I'm sure that I'm not going to know exactly what I'm doing, and I have to learn to be okay with being wrong. The next one, we're going to talk about the downfall of Eisner and how he kind of let his humility get the best of him. So Eisner worked in entertainment from 1966 to 2005, and towards the end of his career in 1994, Jeffrey and Michael Ovitz, they actually filed monetary lawsuits against Eisner. And without going into too much detail, it was just like a financial lawsuit, and it was a big giant mess because they thought that he wasn't fulfilling his duties as a CEO. So there was actually a Save Disney campaign launched against him, and a lot of people were trying to say that he was responsible for mismanagement and he shouldn't be in the position that he was anymore. And instead of him like going and trying to fix like and listen to the people and try to fix where he went wrong, he went forward with the lawsuit. And there was actually like they talked to the shareholders, and 43% of the shareholders wanted to vote him out because they didn't think that he was in a position to be leading anymore. So in March 2005, he actually stepped down before he could be fired, and a new elector was held for the CEO of Walt Disney. What we can learn from this, I think from Michael Eisner, there's some positives and some negatives, obviously, that we can learn from him. As far as positives, there's power in intellectual curiosity and courage. So we've seen how he actually wants to learn more and like wants to learn how to be a better CEO, and that's what helped him get so far and what helped him like make Disney what it is now. And he also had the courage to step out of his comfort zone and make all these business decisions that weren't always the easiest to do. And this caused him to gain bigger and better jobs every single year, from like starting from graduating with a liberal arts degree to all the way to being a CEO at Walt Disney. And as far as the negatives for what we can learn, I would say his lack of humility was definitely something that we could learn from. This ultimately costed him his position at Walt Disney as of CEO. And so after looking at Michael Eisner, taking a look into my plan, I've learned how to take some advice from him in his journey, and then to help me create some goals for myself and how I can use liberal arts to meet my goals for myself. So I'm taking his advice. I'm going to start young while obtaining a degree to learn and develop my general knowledge. So I'm actually taking the long route when it comes to nursing, because I could just get my RN and start in the field like within 2 years, but I'm taking the 6-year route so I can get a better general knowledge and stay at my Christian school and just obtain my bachelor's degree instead of just getting the 2-year RN. And I think this is important because I'm learning a lot of foundations here at Hope that I'm going to be able to use later on in life, and not just things directly when it comes to nursing. Next, I hope that when I'm older, I'm going to be able to develop a resume. Like he said, he jumped from different job to job. Obviously not like every month, but he had many different jobs. So by the time he got to be like the CEO of Walt Disney, he already had a resume. So whether this means that I become like a travel nurse and I branch from different hospital to hospital, I think it's going to be important for me to build my resume and have all this previous knowledge before I land at my final job. And another thing that I really liked that he said is liking your career. Again, whether this means that I'm branching from different hospital to hospital until I find my place, I really want to make sure that I'm happy with what I'm doing, because this is what I'm going to be doing long term. Also, I'm going to be using the foundations of liberal arts in my everyday life. As we talked about before earlier, like intellectual curiosity, like wanting to learn what I'm doing and having a passion for nursing. And then also like humility, accepting when I'm wrong, having empathy when it comes to my patients. And these are just foundations that I'm going to be doing and using in my everyday life, even when it doesn't come to nursing and just like interacting with others. And lastly, one thing that I'm going to take from him is to be humble always, because there was definitely a lot of situations where he could have made other people happy if he could have just admitted that he was wrong and then fixed the situation. But I feel like he is a stubborn man and he needed to be humbled a little bit. So that's something that I'm going to be learning, is that no matter like how successful I am, always stay humble. And with that being said, some of my goals is to be a nurse practitioner or even a clinical nurse educator. So like teaching the nursing students like in actual hospitals like what they should be doing as far as clinical wise. And I think that after seeing Michael Eisner and his steps that he took from a liberal arts degree to become the powerful man that he is today, I'm excited to be able to take those steps as well. And then those are my sources. Thank you.